I just don't get it. The world doesn't seem to make sense. All the institutions most commonly thought of as right-leaning, churches, militaries, law enforcement agencies, all seem to be collectivist by definition. Yeah, that kind of collectivism. It's quite disheartening, a little bit baffling even. And then I look at leftist organizations, labor unions, Occupy Wall Street, Antifa, and they don't seem to be collectivist at all. It's fairly stunning in its ass backwardness. First, let me start with the definition of collectivism. In its most basic sense, collectivism is about putting the needs of the group above the needs of the individual. The Oxford English Dictionary defines collectivism as the practice or principle of giving a group priority over each individual in it. Merriam-Webster's defines collectivism as emphasis on collective rather than individual action or identity. The Encyclopedia Britannica states, collectivism, any of several types of social organization in which the individual is seen as being subordinate to the social collectivity, such as a state, a nation, a race, or a social class. Collectivism may be contrasted with individualism, in which the rights and interests of the individual are emphasized. While Vocabulary.com reads, collectivism is a political theory associated with communism. More broadly, it is the idea that people should prioritize the good of society over the welfare of the individual. We find some historical context on Wikipedia, which reads, collectivism was an important part of Marxist-Leninist ideology in the Soviet Union, where it played a key part in forming the new Soviet man, willingly sacrificing his or her life for the good of the collective, and fully replaceable. Even Ayn Rand defines collectivism as the subjugation of the individual to a group, whether to a race, class, or state, does not matter. Collectivism holds that man must be chained to collective action and collective thought for the sake of what is called the common good. All of these definitions, yet people still call liberal individualists collectivists. They say any group is a collective, and it is in the grammatical sense, but not all groups follow the principles of collectivism. A murder of crows is not collectivism. A herd of cattle is not collectivism. Schools of fish, prides of lions, flocks of seagulls, not collectivism. None of these groups fit the definition of collectivism. Ayn Rand would not approve. If you want to find collectivism in nature, you have to know where to look. This is collectivism. A beehive is a group of individuals who give priority to the group. So much so that evolution no longer even takes place at the level of the individual, but it takes place at the level of the hive. And this is what is so amazing about human groups. Humans, through our cultural adaptations, are at least a little bit like the eusocial insects and animals. It is this human ability to sacrifice for the good of our collective groups that arguably has propelled our species to world domination. But not all human groups are collectives in the collectivism sense. Like a school of fish is not an ant colony, a functioning military is not the collective equivalent of an angry mob. Groups like militaries, religious institutions, law enforcement agencies are more or less about self-sacrifice for the good of the group, which at its core is at least a little bit like the eusocial insects. As social scientist Jonathan Haidt puts it, many animals are social. They live in groups, flocks, or herds, but only a few animals have crossed the threshold and become ultrasocial, which means they live in very large groups that have some internal structure, enabling them to reap the benefits the division of labor. Beehives and ant nests, with their separate castes of soldiers, scouts, and nursery attendants, are examples of ultra-sociality, and so are human societies. And some human groups are so good at sacrificing for others, so collectivist, that many evolutionary biologists now believe humans may have, like the Hymenoptera, undergone at least some level of group selection in our distant past. As Haidt explains, let's imagine that 95% of the food on Earth magically disappears tonight, guaranteeing that almost all of us will starve to death within 2 months. Law and order collapse, chaos and mayhem ensue. Who among us will still be alive a year from now? Will it be the biggest, strongest, and the most violent individuals in each town? Or will it be the people who manage to work together in groups to monopolize, hide, and share the remaining food supplies among themselves? Now imagine starvations like that occurring every few centuries, and think about what a few such events would do to the human gene pool. Even if group selection was confined to just a few thousand years, or to the longer period between 70,000 and 140,000 years ago, it could have given us the group-related adaptations that allowed us to burst forth from Africa soon after the bottleneck to conquer and populate the globe. Group selection is still a hotly contested topic in the evolutionary sciences, but researchers today are working on the problem, and if humans evolved through multi-level selection, as some very prominent evolutionary scientists believe, cultural innovations like religion and politics are most certainly the keys to understanding how we accomplish this group unifying feat. But not all groups are the same. Not all collectives are collectivism. And the distinction is important. Human groups that assume a hierarchical structure, where the needs of the group or the institution supersedes the needs of the individuals that make that institution up, can have clear and distinct environmental advantages in many circumstances. And more loosely affiliated groups, where group members are more competitive with one another, and group affiliation merely serves the needs of the individual members more than the members serve the needs of the group or organization, have very different and distinct environmental advantages and disadvantages. More freedom generally leads to more innovation, while less freedom often buys security. It's a messy trade-off, but an inescapable aspect of our human groupishness. So I hope you liked my video. What is your take on collectivism and its use as nothing more than a common pejorative these days? I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. And a big shout out to my new top tier patrons, Autocosm and Isaac Smith. Thank you guys for joining the team. My other top tier patrons are Rebel Waste, Zannyzander, Sally Ferguson, and Julien Denis. Thank you so much for your support. I also have some other new patrons I'd like to thank: Zombrero, Lyndon Vinsky McEwen, MFW, Lur, or LR. I'm not sure about that one. And Dono Therese. Thank you so much, guys. Welcome to Team Adam. And if you enjoy this kind of informative and thought-provoking content, please consider supporting my work with a $1 contribution on Patreon or Maker Support. I now have Maker Support, so you can show your support there. Links are in the description. If you're unable to make a financial contribution, you can always support my work by subscribing to my channel, along with liking and sharing this video with a friend. I also have a second channel where I upload more frequent, less polished content. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you're welcome to subscribe there. Links are in the description. I'm Adam. I hope you learned something new today, and we'll see you in the next video.
Now, most people think, wrongly so, that individuals who congregate around some kind of belief or identity and act in the interest of that shared identity would be called a collective. This is, of course, not so, as only enlightened rationalists like Sargon would know. In the same way that a group of crows is called a murder, and a group of cattle is called a herd, a group of individuals is not called a collective. The proper plural term for individuals is actually a ball pit. That's right, a ball pit of individuals. We fellow rationalists welcome Sargon and his new individualistism, which is, of course, not some kind of collective.
Wrong.